Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of All Access Art, part of the CAF Plus YouTube lineup. I'm really excited for this first episode because we're talking to a couple different collectors about what they wish they'd known, how long have they been collecting, and what have they learned over the years. So this first episode's titled, So You Got Your First Piece of Art. Now what? Hey, Carl, how's it going tonight?
Hey, Tatiana, how's it going? How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on my very first episode of All Access Art.
Hey, first of all, thank you. It's an honor, and I'm glad it's you because you were one of my first experiences in a very positive way for both comic art and Magic the Gathering art.
Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. So today we're talking about something specific, and it's really about things that you wish you had known, things that you've learned as a collector. So it's called You Got Your First Piece of Art. Now what? So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, who you are, how you got into this, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief because I do have an interview with our friend Ruben where we're going to deep dive on who I am personally. But in short, my name is Choi. I've been a collector my whole life. I started my career working in a comic book shop at the age of 14, got into baseball cards, Magic the Gathering, but the newest and the deepest craze was original comic art. And, the way I collect, I'm a big believer in following my heart. So my collecting habits may evolve quickly early on, but when something like sparks joy or curiosity, I tend to dive pretty deep. And I'm also not afraid to pivot if need be, because often you just learn things and you're like, oh my God, that doesn't really align with what I want to do anymore as a collector. But yeah, that's me as a collector. And by day, I'm a producer. I also a co-founder and publisher at 24/7 Comics. I love interweaving kind of the different aspects of fandom, especially when it kind of turns into really cool social experiences, like the event that we hosted over at Magic the Gathering one-on-one night at OAX with Steve. That was awesome. Like when things combine from different facets of things I collect, that's really what brings me joy.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And thank you again for that. For those of you who weren't there, you can get the full FOMO now. We had a Magic the Gathering event at OA Expo this year, and it was, kind of a how to play, a good opportunity for people who'd never played before. And Carl was there to help people learn, but also as part of 24/7 Comics had donated a good amount of product for the show, which was just phenomenal. Everyone had such a good time.
So fun. Wait for next year.
Yes, I'm so excited. We're planning all sorts of things. I won't say anything here because I don't want it to already be on the internet and have to do it. But we're planning a lot. It's going to be amazing. So, but that's another show.
Well, that has to be a show in itself.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We're going to definitely kind of have to do a countdown, right? What's coming up.
Yeah.
So, you've been collecting for a while. You've been collecting different types of art. You're actually I'm one of these too. There's only a handful of us who collect kind of across different types of art. But we're getting more people to do that, right? Because a lot of people have multiple fandoms, but they only collect in one area. You mentioned things like being comfortable with pivoting. But what other things, if you were to travel back in time and talk to Carl, who just got his first piece of art, what are some things you wish you had known then that are some kind of must-haves or things that people need to know for collecting?
Okay. If I was to think back, I would kind of start with big picture, just to kind of prepare, your mentality going into this, because at the end of the day, it's really easy when it comes to collecting to get caught up in the acquisition aspect of it all. But the truth is, it's really about connection in different aspects, not just with the art, but with the people, the creators, the community. I think that's what makes this hobby so beautiful. And when you think about, connecting, there's also a lot to do with learning. And in fact, this collecting world, especially original comic art, is almost like being back in school, right? It's funny because there's different cliques, there's friends, there's socialites, there's the cool kids, there's the bullies, there's all kinds of people that kind of collect in their own way, and everyone has kind of their thesis and what makes the most sense. And you just gotta kind of find your niche. And sometimes you may want to be just an individual learner and go on your own journey as well, which is totally okay. But one of the things that's really important to know, and I know often it doesn't come up much, but school costs money, right? Like education costs money. So yeah, you could go to a public school, you go to a private school, but at the end of the day, like the experience also depends on how deep you go. And like the truth is, the deeper you go, you'll find others to meet you there, which is kind of a cool thing, right? So yeah, I think in short, I would say like early on, just understand that you kind of have to pay to learn. Each page that you acquire, you do learn something from it. Each interaction that you make, there's also lessons there. And then even when you have to let something go, there's a lot of lessons there. So I would just kind of start there on kind of a big picture.
No, those are some great thoughts, and I think that a lot of people, when they start collecting, they don't take into consideration that financial piece of it. What is your plan with collecting art? Why are you doing it? How much are you planning to spend? A lot of people just kind of, and myself included, right, is this kind of finding your way in the dark of, you got a piece of art, you got another piece of art. Eventually you realize you're an art collector, but what does that mean? And how does that affect your financial well-being as a person?
Yeah. And then also when you think about collecting, I think for me at least, like I wish someone kind of broke this down for me because I had no idea what it was. I had to just read and learn, but just know your formats as well, because depending on the format, it comes with kind of different triggers, right? Like for example, I think the one that most people know first and often get like blown away by what the initial costs are published pieces, right? So you usually, are typically more costly because like, it seemed like yesterday when I would walk across like a dealer's table and I would start flipping through the books, I'd be like, this is crazy. Like, what the heck, But I'm part of that crazy camp now, like some years later. Published pieces, as much as it does, challenge you to stretch, there's also resale equity. So I think there's something there to that. Often I think it's sometimes ignored, and it's said that you shouldn't think about that, but I think it's important to think about that because the value of some of this stuff has gone to a place where you truly have to decide on if you're gonna pay for your car payment or this new piece of art, And so when that happens, it's almost impossible to not acknowledge that there's some sort of investment. Now, if you don't care about all that, you don't care about published art, there's like a few other ways, other formats to enjoy the art. I would say kind of a low-hanging fruit would be like sketches, right? Like you could get sketches on cards, on sketch covers, or like full on like sketchbooks, which I've kind of learned to enjoy. And even for me to have arrived there later in my collecting career was because I ran to our friend Dan Tancredi, who is like a big sketchbook guy. And we were hanging out at Baltimore Comic Con and we literally sat down for like an hour and a half and he gave me like the sketchbook 101. And so that's someone that needs to be on one of these episodes because he goes deep in that world. And it's also like a really good experimental format where you could like really set it up ahead of time, have artists do different takes, and also has been really fun for me to connect with new artists and kind of try and see what angles and interpretations other artists can kind of provide on a particular topic. And kind of the third format, I'm sure there's a bunch more, but it's just commissions. And when you step into commissions, I feel like I wish I knew, but often like it's 100% love, right? There's like pretty much no resale value. If you want to let it go and you want to like move it from your collection, just know, breaking even would be like a huge plus. And then ultimately, it's more for your personal collection and growing that, collection of whatever theme that you're collecting against for commissions. But you just got to budget carefully and make sure that you're aware of that. So I think those are the three kind of formats that would be, a good way to learn ahead of time to kind of figure out, where you want to start. And I feel like most people start on like the sketch side and then kind of graduate from there.
Oh, I was definitely my first piece of art was a sketch in a sketchbook. So I definitely started there. To you, what's the difference between a sketch and a commission? Where's that line?
Yeah, I think for me, I learned about commissions first. So I went backwards. So my first piece was directly from an artist, Bernard Chang, who I had dinner with. And then we ended up, we had like a group dinner where I met him. And then we just happened to be in New York Comic Con 2017. He had a booth there. And I was just, hey, I'll come by and visit you. I went to visit him. And then we're just chit chatting. And then, when you're chit chatting, you kind of look down to see what he's selling. But he didn't have any comics. He just had this portfolio of like black and white art. I was like, I'm telling him, I'm like, and I got distracted. I was like, what is this? And he's like, that's my original art. And I was like, why do you have it here? Oh, they're for sale. I was like, they're for sale? And I was like, wait, you could actually buy original art? And so I turned the page and I saw a Nightwing page. And I was like, yo, I love Nightwing. And basically said, oh, how much is this? And he's like, it's usually this, but since you're a homie, I'll give you it for you for this. And then so I ended up buying my first piece. And then that's kind of how it started. And so I think from then on, like I bought, I think my second piece from Ron Lim, which was like an Infinity War page at the time when they were affordable. And then I started kind of like searching online for like sites. And I think you were one of the first sites that I found because I love darkness. And so like you probably remember it too, because I was such an amateur. I'm like trying to negotiate. I don't know what the heck I'm looking for. I don't know what I'm doing, but just had like way too many questions. And you were so patient with me. So I really appreciated that. And I think that's kind of how then I started rolling down that path. And then some of the dealers and reps would have email blasts and they would offer commissions. And so I would just be, oh, I'll sign up for this. And then the commissions, were not, not cheap. But the way I would separate it would be more so, you're commissioning like a publisher would commission. So it's more higher quality. It's more the artist working at home. So often they would say cover quality. And so when there's cover quality, then they're spending as much time doing your commission as they would do a cover for a Marvel Comics, a DC Comics, etc. Sketch would be more so a limited time. I think like a really good way would be to look at how like Art Adams does it. I think he basically has like a budget and time, and so like for 15 minutes you buy for $400, whatever that is, and then like for 30 minutes is $600, and then for an hour and then he'll basically draw what he can with that given amount of time. And often sketches happen at conventions, and so an artist can probably get like 3 or 4 sketches in throughout the course of the day, because within that 8 hours they're doing signatures or hustling their comics, and then in between they would basically do these sketches to fill time and also make some money.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a lot of collectors might not realize is the tools that are used too. So quick, convention sketches are usually kind of in what's in their to-go box, the stuff that's easy for them to take at shows, especially when you're looking at anything with inks or colors. You're not, and I won't say never because it happens, but it is a lot less common for you to see an artist at a show doing sketches with real ink or with real watercolors, right? They usually have like their markers and their pens and other things. Whereas when they're doing that at home, that cover quality, they're going to be using their at home published cover set of tools.
That makes sense. Yeah, because often they're just at their table, like sketching away. And then unless you're at like Heroes Con, where I remember that whole stage, and then everyone has their painting gear, and people are like painting full on pieces, and that was kind of cool. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times when you get a commission, I've definitely seen a lot of Zipatone in the ones that I've ordered, which are bigger, 11 by 17. And I think that's a way to kind of really like fill the space as well. And they do actually put a lot more details in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's really good that you explained kind of that difference, because it's not a black and white obvious thing, right? With published work, it's published or it's not.
Yeah,
But sketches and commissions, they all kind of start from the root of I'm paying you to draw a thing for me. But it's that level, that quality, the time spent, like you mentioned. So definitely a difference there.
Yeah, no, and even like sketch and prelim sketches, right? Prelims versus sketches versus the finished pieces. The more obvious ones would be in like Magic the Gathering. I remember like winning some auctions over pandemic on like sketches, and winning the paintings and then putting them side by side. I was like, I like the paintings better. Like, and I ended up, selling those sketches because there was other folks that like sketches a lot too, but it's just preference, right? I think I don't think the right way or wrong way or one way is better than the other. I think it's more about like what you're into.
That's a great point. I think a lot of people worry about, am I collecting the right way or wrong way? And the answer is there isn't one. It's what you like. I know people who only collect process work. They only collect, roughs, thumbnails, prelims, storyboards. They don't collect the final art. And it's not a money thing necessarily. It's just a preference. That's what they like to see. They like to see the process.
Yep. Completely agree. And I think what other advice, I guess kind of like parlaying from that, like listen to yourself, I would say like the biggest lesson I've learned, and this takes time. This takes time to just calibrate, but I would say always collect for yourself. And ultimately what that means is nobody should dictate how or what you collect. So kind of going back to the whole like school reference is like, just like there are schools, there's like clubs, there's critics, there's really strong opinions. Listen to them all, but follow your heart because everyone's going to come from a different set of experiences that inform how they collect, but that doesn't mean it'll work for you. So like one of the things I love, I watched you and Matt on that show is, one of the things he talked about was like early on, like why he had you three was because there was a lot of respect in the way he was treated. And so it's taught him to always be respectful. And that's why him and I get along. That's why we're triple X bros. And so respect everyone. And even if you had a bad experience, still be respectful because there are a lot of great people in this hobby. And then kind of the other thing is like realize you can't own everything. So, this is actually one of the biggest lessons I've kind of gotten pushed to by friends is to make a list. I think making a list really helps you think through what you really like and what you love. Because I can say this. I can say often when it's not on my list, there are times where I question, why I got it afterwards. Because often it's like due to other kind of reasons, right? But every time something's on my list and I second guessed it myself, I always regretted it. And so always make a list so you kind of use that as an exercise to think about what you really want. And I think that's really important.
What's something that's in your collection now that was on your list before you got it?
Oh my gosh. There is a cover from Batman. It was Azrael's first appearance on a Batman cover, 488 by Travis Choi. And in fact, it was literally the first cover that showed up that I saw that I said, oh, I'll never get this. It's one of those that I'll put in my want list, right? And then most recently I got something else, but I haven't premiered it yet, so I'll save that for later. But ultimately, that was, I thought at one point was impossible. And it really was because it was kind of in a place where it was what they call a black hole. And even though it was a dealer, it was still kind of like a black hole dealer, right? In the way it was positioned. But, one of the things that I talked about earlier is about connections, right? And if I wasn't connected to the community like I was at the time that I ended up getting this, I wouldn't have been able to get it because it was through a few friends collectively, actually just two of us, contributing to a pool of art that was able to adjust prices for both of us, so that he got something that was kind of in the black hole for a price that he was happy with, and I got a couple of things that was in the black hole that I in the price that I was happy with. And so sometimes collaborating with other community members to acquire what you want is also a really cool way and a fun experience in itself.
Oh yeah, that's a really great tip. And just for anybody watching who doesn't know what the black hole reference means, if you hear collectors talking about either a black hole collection or a black hole collector, what that means generally is that they collect and they don't ever sell or trade. So when that person acquires something for their collection, everyone says, "Oh, well, it's in a black hole, so now I'm never going to be able to get it." But this is a great example of sometimes you can. It just takes more because that person really wants to keep it. And so there's a higher kind of barrier to entry to getting them, but you probably, did well that they were a dealer. And so they still have that mindset like, okay, well, let's see what I can do. And then they felt like it was was in their kind of in their favor. So they're able to do that.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we all have to remember all the dealers that are out there, all the reps, whatever, they were all collectors at one point, and they still are collectors. So I think often I feel I have a lot of empathy. I feel bad for dealers and reps sometimes, where it's almost like people forget, like they're collectors too. Like don't treat them any different. Like be respectful and just talk like human beings, and you'll be surprised, the kind of deals you'll be able to make.
It's always really interesting to find out when you talk to dealers what the things are that they like, because you don't ever really know when you just see them selling stuff. You have no idea what it is that their personal preferences are.
Yeah, and they all have like crazy collections. Some of them you just search them on CAF and you're like, wow, they have this. No wonder they're selling all this stuff like nothing.
Oh, absolutely. So do you have any stories that you'd want to share of experiences after the fact where you thought, man, I really wish I had known this going in, or I wish I had done something differently, that you look back on and if you had different information or knowledge going in, that you might have it might have had a different outcome?
I don't have anything specific. I think my personality, if I was like, okay, I understand. I think often if you were to observe my personality, I'm like such a do or die guy, because I am like such a big believer of time being our most valuable resource that I often jump into things deep, and because I jump into things deep, I often end up like having to learn lessons really quickly, right? And so to me, that's a very positive thing, because it allows me to figure out what I like and don't like, and fine tune, right? But I would say like coming out of that, and what that means is the whole DYOR, right? Do your own research. I do feel like one of the things that I could have been less lazy about it was to really do a lot of the research I do now, which is searching heritage auction for results, giving a few calls to friends to get the insights. Because often, we just have to be reminded that like social media, newsletters, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, they're designed to sell. And so you can't always 100% rely on them on where you put your dollars, because a lot of times these venues are places to convince you to buy something, right? And often it's so easy when you don't kind of know what you're looking for to just be like, oh yeah, that's right, oh, I'll buy that, oh yeah, that's right, you buy that, and then all of a sudden you're piling up on stuff that someone else told you to buy versus what you actually really wanted. And so I think another kind of thought would be more so like in general when it comes to auctions. I feel like I've got a hand a few times, and like basically was emotionally hijacked, because I didn't set my number in advance.
Been there.
Yeah, right. So like you're in it, and you're just kind of like, oh, I gotta get it. I have to get it. And sometimes, and there's a couple of times where I'm like, dude, I'm so glad I went all the way because that's mine, right? But there's other times where like I don't know what it was. It was just a perfect storm. It was like a very hype piece, and I just felt like I had to get it, but it wasn't like on my list, right? And so I don't regret it. Often, I think I've been able to, for better or worse, I don't know if some of those that I'm referencing aren't even in my collection anymore, but they are. I do enjoy them. They're still part of my collection. But just be more disciplined, because the auction can really wreck your budget.
Oh yeah, no, I've definitely had auction wins where I get that invoice and I'm like, oh well, I was not planning on spending this much money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you were talking about doing your research, I just wanted to, one of the things I also really like that I think a lot of people aren't aware of or don't use is, CAF has the premium subscription, and that you can, as part of that, you can get the market data portion of it. And that can be really, really helpful too, because you can't find sold prices everywhere. There are certain auction houses that are very transparent and you can see all the history and search back. And then there are ones that you can't. And so the having some of that market data information that is, kind of looked through beforehand and presented in that way can be really, really helpful. And you just made such a great point about, prices like that something's posted for versus what it sells for. I always tell people you can put whatever price tag you want on eBay.
Yeah.
You can put up a ball of lint and $1 million price tag. They're not going to stop you. Anybody can do that.
Yep.
But what matters is what things actually sell for. And so that's why that market data is so incredibly important, especially when you're shopping in the secondhand market, to help to give you that guidance. Is it something you want real bad and you're willing to pay a little bit more than it's worth? That's totally fine. But if you just keep hitting the bid button and then you find out later that you paid double what it's worth, that can feel bad.
It does feel a little bad. It's kind of like, oh well, Yeah, I often just laugh about it, but it's funny because like there's times like that, but then there's other times where you're like, I have to have it, and like when you're out, and often like you're asked to make an offer, and for some of those pieces that are in like black hole collections, one thing I've learned is you have to go over market. And then that's a really good question to ask yourself if you're willing to go over market, because it doesn't really matter because you're keeping that forever in the context of life, right? And so, or how many years you have on Earth at least. And so you don't really think about the money as much, because one of the things I say is there's always more money, but there's only one piece of art. But at the same time, there's always more art. And so it's kind of a vicious cycle that you really have to marinate and trust your heart when it comes to making some of these decisions. And I think that's why having some of the lists and some rule sets in place is also super helpful.
When you're looking at things like, new Magic sets that come out or a new, Captain America story or any of that, right? New Azrael story that's coming out. Do you tell yourself, okay, I can get one thing from this book or one thing from the set? Or how do you structure those types of thoughts for you to kind of keep yourself within a reasonable budget so you don't go overboard?
You want to go Magic first, or go
whichever you want to do first.
I think Magic, I've learned as well, because early on with Magic, it was just consumption. Any new set comes out, I'll buy collector boosters, I'll buy singles, I'll buy whatever. I think the rule set for Magic is if you're going to buy kind of collect the boosters or boxes, keep them sealed, because those become long-term investment vehicles, because there really is a market there now. And only crack them knowing that it's for the experience. Don't try to like make money off cracking these boxes, because often you're like, oh man, the new serial number card is on the Final Fantasy, but these boxes cost $600 a box. I can get a serial card number for $3,000, but the statistics is you have to crack 366 boxes to get one of those serial numbers, right? So it's
gambling. It's gambling. That's all it is.
Always gonna win, right? So that's Magic. On the comic art side, I've kind of steered away from modern art. You remember, like I remember you were the advisor for my very first ever setting art out for sale ever. And I remember, hey, send me your list of art. And then you introduced me to Doug. And you were like, let me look at your art first. And then you called me and you're like, Carl, a lot of this is modern art. So you should definitely talk to Doug at Comic Lake. I think that's the best venue to let these go. And you're right. At the time, I just had a major pivot because I was just buying random stuff for a while, like just for whatever reason, right? And it worked well because the money that came back, I was able to parlay into art that I was into at the time, right? And so that's another like major lesson is like, don't be afraid to purge and recycle, because that's what this hobby is all about, right? I think there are folks out there that may say one thing or another, but dude, like these are like real assets, and the truth is we don't live forever, right? Like unless you're really planning to like bury yourself with all your art, like have a freaking plan, dude. Like you have to think about your family, your friends, even a museum, right? Like think about like what happens if you disappear one day. If the Thanos snap happened, what do you do with your art? So like make sure you document all that kind of stuff. And I know my wife hates hearing about it, but I always have to remind her like, oh, here's like the paperwork, it's here, and here's the passwords here. Make sure you do XYZ. Here's the people you call. And she's like, I don't want to hear. I was like, you need to know this stuff just in case, because these are like real assets as much as their love and passion and joy, as much as it brings us all that. We have to be real about the real dollars that are being spent on it.
Well, and there's how many horror stories? I mean, I guess it depends on which side of it you're on, but we've seen collections get donated to, Goodwill or any of those places, and they don't know what they're selling. So they're, slapping $10 or whatever on them. Or, I mean, I've seen stuff, they'll sell it in a garage sale, or, there's nothing wrong with estate sales, but estate sales are not the right place to sell things like original art, because those aren't the types of people who are going there. And generally speaking, most people who are doing things like estate sales, they don't specialize in that.
There's two instances we could use as an example. There was one recently, I forgot what the page was. Maybe we could pull it up, but it was like a Dark Knight Returns Superman page. It was like a very prominent page, and some dude like posted it on Facebook, comic art collectors, whatever, and people were like, the sharks were coming out of nowhere, jumping on it, and eventually I think it ended up at an auction house. But that guy bought it, I think, at like a garage sale or something like that. It was just a frame sitting on the floor, and who knows? He probably paid like $30 for it. And then alternatively, on the Magic side, in one of my Magic chat groups, a friend of ours came in and basically said, "Guess how much I bought this for?" And it was just a box, and he only showed a few cards. And ultimately, he opens up. It was a full set of dual lands. It was a full set of like 2 Power Nines maybe, and like some of the older like beta cards. And we're like, "How much?" And he's like, $20. And so like it still happens today, right?
Yeah.
You can find like gems anywhere.
And for the uninitiated, if you bought that box of Magic cards, how much is it worth?
I don't know. At this point, with the full deck, I think you probably at least clear like $5,000 at least on that little box.
Yeah.
It was someone's gems, right? But finders keepers, right?
And people would be absolutely shocked if they knew how many people are out there who are not known to the collecting community, who own like one piece of art or two pieces of art. They just happened to get, they went 1 year to a Gen Con, or they went 1 year to some convention 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I mean, just, whenever, and they bought it because they liked it and it's been on their wall. And over that time, it's become, one of the most iconic Magic cards of all time, or a super key, comic book storyline by an artist that's impossible to get stuff from. They have no idea that they have $10,000, $20,000 piece of art on their wall. They have no clue. And so it's important to have a plan for things, because these are one of a kind. They were, created for games or books or things that are important to us, right? They're nostalgic for us, and we want those things to stay around.
Yeah.
If people think, I wonder how much art goes in the trash.
Yeah. Apparently a lot of art does, because one of the dealers, they were telling me how when they were younger, when they first got into comic art, they used to go like dumpster diving, and they would go to the back of Marvel and DC, and they'll jump in the dumpsters and pull their trucks up and haul art out. And then there's other times where I guess they would go to like storage facilities and buy art by the pounds, which is pretty crazy, right? Now that we think about it. So
yeah, there didn't used to be a market for comic book artwork. It was a production thing that all got sent back to the publishers, and it was often thrown away, or it was given to somebody's kid who likes whatever, and that kid could have grown up not known anything about comic art. It's sitting in their basement. And it's, the first appearance of whatever. I mean, there are so many key pieces of art that we'd have no idea where they are.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I can't remember what piece of art it was, but there was a similar story recently where someone literally just owned that one piece of art, and he took it to an auction. He took it to get appraised, and it was like something pretty prominent. But it's not coming to me right now, but maybe it'll come back to me within this conversation.
I have a collector I met at OA Expo this year, and we were chatting. And through that discussion, I found out that he owns a pretty prominent piece of Magic art. And he collects, a variety of, he is a collector, so he has some different things and he has nice stuff, but he had no idea that piece was worth anything. It was just he saw it at a show, liked it, bought it. It's not going anywhere. It's in his collection, but it's really good now that he knows what it is that he has, if he ever wants to sell it or anything. Um, but as a collector, no one else in your household knows anything about all these things that you have. So yeah, like Carl said, have a plan. Write it into your will. Have things there so that if you are no longer there for whatever reason, right? Whether you pass away or disappear or there's a million different reasons why you could no longer be responsible for your art collection, that you want the people that you care about to know what to do with it, because that's part of your investment portfolio, for your life and your family's lives and all of that stuff. And that way they don't have to worry about, what am I supposed to do with this? Is it worth anything? They just know, here are these things. It's worth this money. Call this person.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, unless you're a vampire or have eternal life, then don't worry about it. It's all good.
Vampires, still, things happen.
That's true.
Vampires too.
They have stakes through the heart.
But yeah, that's a really great piece of advice, because I think people just don't think about that. They collect and they don't think about, what if somebody needs to know what to do with these things?
Yeah,
Who are they supposed to call? And
it's real money now. I mean, these days when you kind of, I know, like, we're all very lucky, like we're all very spoiled and have the privilege to be able to like collect, these pieces of artwork. But at the end of the day, it's real money that could, be resources allocated towards other good things, right? And so even I think Bill is going to have a show with Chuck on insurance, right? Like they're going to talk about that. Collectors insurance. I got very early on because whenever I spend real money on real stuff, I want to make sure they're insured. And I guess we'll learn more on that episode when Bill talks to Chuck. But that's another kind of a small piece of advice to make sure your collection is insured as well.
I know you had that really was brought up for you with the fires in LA a few months ago. When the fire's coming, you don't have time to take every piece of art down off the wall and put it in the car, right? I mean, it's a priority, but obviously people, pets, and that kind of stuff is first. And if you don't do a good job of tracking what you have and insuring it and all those things, what are you going to do? If it's gone, it's gone, right?
Yeah, that was
I remember we were in a chat together and you mentioned that after the fires.
Awakening for sure on the fires, because it's just so much stuff. And I think you don't even know, because sometimes you just collect. But I was in Serbia on the shoot, and then my wife had to move all my art, and I didn't know how much I had until she told me. She went back to the house twice, and we're on several stories, and she had to walk up and down the stairs, and she's a little woman, and she had to carry all my art, and she ended up hurting her back and was like bedridden for a couple of days, and so totally broke my heart. And like ever since then, I've been on a downsizing mode where I just realized, like, all right, I don't need like this much art. I just need to like get, really cut down to my essentials. And I've been a happy camper because a lot of the stuff has been moving, and it's gotten much lighter in the household. And, I think that's kind of the way to go. And that's just another cycle. It's just another pivot. Right. And I feel like, I'm still collecting, I'm still picking up a lot of cool stuff. And so I'm just being a little bit more conscious now.
I guess you just have to put all the expensive art on the main floor.
Yeah, I guess so. Just put it out front on the patio.
Tell her, just grab these and don't worry. I'll put the cheapest stuff all the way upstairs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the stuff on the wall nowadays, like, you can't even take with you, right? Like I've heard some stories where the folks that, was impacted by the fires, it's like they lost everything else on their walls, right? And so I've definitely been, a little bit more conscious of that. And now I understand why some people end up putting copies on their wall. And I think there's no judgment there. I think you could still enjoy art, even if it's a nice copy, but you get to save your original. That's freaking awesome. Like this one behind me. This was like this was my first love. That was on your site. And it took a while, but eventually we figured out a deal. But, it's been on my wall ever since, right? And so I feel like, I think definitely do your best to protect your art. rather it's through insurance or however you store it or however you carry it. But fires happen, earthquakes happen, natural disasters happen.
The photocopy thing is a very polarizing recommendation.
Yeah.
There are people who swear by it. Everything that's up on their wall is a photocopy, and then there are people who are just absolutely like abhor the idea. And so really it just comes down to the collector. If you're worried about putting something on your wall, just make a high, obviously you need to have integrity. Like you're not doing something with that copy other than using it, for your own display purposes. But I've had people say they do that, then they don't have to worry about environmental damage or light or any of that other kind of stuff fading their artwork either. So there's multiple reasons to do a copy versus putting the original up. But you can totally put originals up too. I'm in putting originals up camp, but I completely understand why people put up copies, and I think it's a great alternative as well.
Yeah, all good reasons. Even though I want to put copies up, everything I have on my walls are original. So that may be just out of laziness.
You're like, well, I already framed it. And
yeah, I know the paintings, right? When you frame a painting, you can't you can't really, paintings are impossible. Once you frame it, it's on the wall. You're not gonna, put it in a safe somewhere because it doesn't fit, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's a little different too. When we're talking about people putting up photocopies, that's usually of light comic art. It's a lot easier. Black and white comic art, right?
Yes.
Because a painting just never, getting a copy of it made, it just never has that same.
No way. Yeah, paintings are beautiful. Like the texture, you always see. I'm surrounded by paintings.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Hildebrandt, the Angelus one.
Yeah,
I was really glad when I saw that you picked that one up. It's a really good one.
Yeah, I love that piece too. And yeah, the Hildebrandt, rest in peace. It was cool to get a piece from the brothers, right? And from a title that I loved growing up as well. So that was a huge blessing. And
I think that the price on that compared to a lot of, because they're not known for that type of stuff. Sure. I know as a fan of kind of the Witchblade related books,
yes,
but also loving fantasy, I was really excited when I saw that cover. But that's not something they're known for, or a fan base they're known for. So you can get something like that at a much more reasonable price than getting D&D art or stuff that they're really known for, that they have, really, really deep fan bases for.
Yeah, that's another lesson too. If you love an artist and you happen to love something that they weren't known for, you can actually get some deals. Because to me, that's like a commission, right? It's but it's published, right? And that's the coolest thing, where it's way more affordable. It's probably half the price of what a painting that they're known for, or like a Thor or something, would cost. But for me, this was perfect. It's a cover I recognize. I remember it was when they did 11 variant covers, and this was one of them. And so there was a history and a moment in history that I remember, and very nostalgic to me. And it's huge too. So that's another plus. But yeah, I'm totally spaced on the walls because of how magic art just started getting bigger and bigger and got super ridiculous. So it pretty much bumped everything away. And now I pretty much have 2 or 3 paintings on each wall outside of this one.
Yeah, it makes it hard. I have some pieces that are, I try not to go too big, but I do have a few pieces that are 24 by 36. And then what do you do?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. They look ridiculous because this room is just kind of a small room, but I have a big piece of art here. But what can you do? You want that art? Yeah.
That's hallway art. Art. Speaking of, if you like certain artists, that's my Alex Ross covers like that. Mm. I love his work, but most of his covers are by most collector standards are expensive, as they should be, right? He's incredible.
Sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I was able to buy a cover of his from another collector. That's from a small press book that I remember reading in college. And it was a cover I always liked.
Yeah.
But it was a book no one had ever heard of. But it's an Alex Ross cover. So for me, it's a win-win because it's an artist I love and a book I love. But that's a great tip. If you are looking for a specific artist, everybody's done a variety of work, and it doesn't have to be the thing that they're known for. If what you're going after is the actual artist's work. just like the flip side, if there's certain characters you like, but the artist doesn't matter to you as much, there's always been a variety of different artists who've worked on different franchises. And so you can find a lot of different price points there as well.
Yeah, speaking of characters, I think that's also another really cool way to theme out your collection. Meaning, we have a friend, Noel, aka Stingray, and he has the biggest Stingray collection in the world because all his commissions are of Stingray. And I feel like he has probably one of the best commission collections out there because the character is not very commonly asked for. And so for one reason or another, I feel like all the artists go above and beyond for his pieces, and including the Hildebrands, where he had this big black and white piece, which is beautiful. And so I feel like, having a theme and character, it's very helpful when it comes to collecting as well.
I mean, I think that's another good tip. Like, what motivates artists, like what's going to be interesting to them. And artists are all different, but a lot of artists love when you give them something to draw they've never drawn before. And there's also one of those, like, I think industry things that maybe not all collectors know, but when you, as a collector, request a character that the artist deems as, you're not going to turn around and sell this.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon for them to put more work into it because they know that they're not putting it more work into something that's going to end up for sale.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I feel like a lot of times artists do, like, and that's kind of the connection piece, right? Like when you connect with an artist and you vibe out, sometimes I get to tell, like I walk away and I was like, man, they're gonna kill this, right? And they do. They go above and beyond. But there's other times, and nothing against rep, but sometimes I'll send things through rep and it comes back and I was like, it was just a day's job, And I think that happens too, right? I feel like you do a good job of like making sure there's good connection and clarity between the artist and the commissioner. Because I felt like even when I, commissioned through your group during OX and I went and said hi to the artist, it was really cool to kind of find that there was already a connection and pre-prep and everything else that came with it. And so, yeah, not I don't want to like generalize, but yeah, I feel like sometimes having that direct connection with the artist really does help with the commission. And I think that's why Newell gets some really solid stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, when you booked your commission for OAX with Near, I let him know it was for you because he had met you at San Diego the year before. So you had, discussions and stuff. And so I let him know it was for you. I also think it's really important, personally as a rep, to not gatekeep that.
Yeah.
My job is to protect my artists in some way. I don't want them to feel inundated, but I also don't ever want to prevent there being communication between the artist and the buyer. Sometimes I end up being the go-between because the artist doesn't feel comfortable with a direct conversation.
Yeah.
But then there can be questions and there can be back and forth because you want, the artist to really understand what it is that the buyer wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important. So, yeah. I think I don't even understand. Like, I've been in the publishing business for about 4 years now, maybe truly just 2 in the industry. But I've learned how a lot of the traditional comic book creation process has evolved from when we were growing up, which was very different. And nowadays I'll meet artists where they've never met the writer before and writers have never met the artist and never met the color. And I'm like, what? And it's like, it just blows my mind because how could you create together if you don't have any human interaction, right? And so in a way, for me, when I work with an artist, I'm co-creating with you, right? I have a clear vision or semi-clear of what I want. And then when I give that collaboration kind of pass the baton, often the artist, would ask questions for me to have input as well. And so I just don't understand when people create comics together and not ever talk to each other because that just seems impossible to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I love that we can do so many things remotely and we can collaborate with people all around the world. But that human connection piece is a big part of it.
So important. So yeah.
And in the collecting world too, right? Making friends with other collectors and getting to know people and all of that.
For sure.
So
yeah.
Carl, before we wrap up today, I wanted to ask you one final question.
Sure.
And this is, if you're willing, would you share with us one of your 2025 art collecting goals?
Okay, let's see. I guess I want to share this first because I wouldn't have my goals this year if not um, if not for a good friend who has been a great mentor for me just through my collecting. I'll just say JL. He really like sat me down and coached me, which is rare because often in this hobby everyone's very passionate and gonna tell you what to do. This is what you gotta do, but I thought it was really cool because he didn't really tell me what to do. He just gave me his own personal framework. And I respect that because it's not like, and it's spoken with the context of me looking at his calf page and like seeing like every piece he has is what I want, right? It's like one of those like,
He's
yeah,
got one of the just best
yes,
collections
it's
that exist.
so
Yeah.
aligned, right? And so he sits me down and basically shared his kind of rule of thumbs, and I was able to kind of add to it, right? And so, very simply put, and I think if we could be disciplined, the way he broke it down was pick known artists or artists you're passionate about, right? But two, pick art that they're known for, and then three is if you can wait for the top 10 examples at the very least that you could get your hands on. So that's not mostly achievable for most people, but that's given me like goals now, right? Where I'm like, okay, you know what? This is kind of like the break for me now, like when I filter. And then on top of that, responded to him and I added two more. And my two is one thing I realized is those three things are really cool because when you talk in the community, you get education, you learn about certain artists, their works, whatnot. But without nostalgia, it's kind of worthless to me. Even though I get something really great in my hand, I'm kind of like, oh, that's cool. No nostalgia, the connection's not there. So for me, that's a really big rule going into this year. That has to be deeply personal. And the fifth thing is another group of friends I spend a lot of time with. This actually matters a lot because when we talked about how like we can't live forever, at the end of the day, like we either our friends inherit it, our family inherit it, but sometimes it'd be kind of cool to see them end up in museums too, right? But I have a group of friends that are very big on that. Like, man, like you will want to see your collection in a museum one day. Like, who wouldn't, right? And so, historical significance is also a really cool thing. Where I think when I was collecting comics back in the day, I was more about story arcs. So I'll buy stories. But yeah, there is always a reason, a commercial reason why, like first appearances and things like that, iconic moments or like deaths, right? Stories that were adapted, whatever. Like those things are actually important. It's probably like the bottom for me, but I do keep an ear out and eye out because I think it is important when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
collecting. So those are kind of like my five filters. I will be posting three pieces over the course of the next like year because what I did basically was uh, basically kind of pre time payment out something for this year, knowing these filters in mind. So I'll be posting those three. So I'm pretty much done for the year, which is like the craziest thing ever, right? And if you were to ask me like 3, 4 years ago how that can happen, uh, I wouldn't be able to tell you. It was really just through experience and through, discussions with other collectors and learning how to be disciplined that I was able to get here. But I can tell you for sure, these three pieces probably equates to the amount of joy it'll bring me to like maybe 50 of the modern pieces that I bought in the past. I would say that because they check off all the lists, right? And so, yeah, I don't have kind of like a, uh, you know, uh, kind of collection vision in that way, but that's kind of what I have. But ultimately, I think going deep to go wide is pretty powerful, and sometimes going too wide can backfire on you. And so I've learned to really just try to focus my efforts, and then at the same time, like if the timing isn't right for something, just let it go because there's always more art.
So, what I got out of that is everybody make sure that you download the CAF app and follow Carl's gallery so that you will be the first to know and you'll see him right on the top of your feed when he puts that new art up. I'm excited to see what you're going to be sharing with us.
I'm so excited myself. I can't wait. So yeah, I'll have them all in hand in July. And I kind of planned it this way because I'm about to disappear probably for like 2, 3 months for production. And when I surface back is probably when I'll start posting. But yeah, I think the other thing about goals is, and this is something I've learned too, uh, it's actually okay to be a little bit more stealthy because often, we're all humans, right? For one reason or another, when you promote your goals too wide, like all of a sudden, all your goals, all your targets, they raise in price. I don't know why, so it just is, right? So I've learned by kind of having certain friends that maybe either not have crossover goals as you or just really got your back, know about those goals is enough. And often I would say like in two of the pieces, out of the last five pieces I've acquired was because a good friend, Amir, was looking out for me. He basically know some of the stuff that I've been looking for, and then either he was offered or something he came across. But yo, man, you gotta check this out. Talk to them, and then he connected us, and then things came together. And so moments like that I'm forever grateful for, because I would have not gotten those pieces if not for a friend. And so yeah, find your tribe. I think that's really important. Who's looking out for you, also look out for other people. So like anytime, like I think the community is really good about Stingray, right? It's almost like he gets spammed every time there's like a Stingray anything that pops up. And so that's really powerful. Like for him, he goes very wide, also very, very deep, right? And so I think so deep into the water, right? So that no one can catch up to his collection at this point. And so kind of similar to like Rob, right? He has Cosmic Ghost Rider. He's gone so deep. I think he like finished the covers, right? There's like no one could catch up. But for me, like I'm not necessarily like that deep in any one aspect. I'm deep in nostalgia and the stuff I love, right? And so I kind of need to be a little bit more careful. But I've also learned, like when you got people that got your back, like you'll get what you want.
The reputation piece matters a lot. Your tribe matters, having good communication with other collectors, having good relationships.
Yeah.
But you have to also be that good person, because this hobby feels big, but in a lot of ways it's really small.
Yeah.
Because if you make other people feel that you're not a good, person to have on their side with collecting, bad stuff can happen in short order.
Sure.
So yeah, that community piece is definitely huge. I am there with you, and I absolutely love our community for sure.
Dude, speaking on that, I mean, even if people have the same collecting goals as you can be friends too and like really partner. Like, cause like, for example, like Daryl and I were like big Azrael guys, right? And so we've definitely like exchanged things. And because I was able to get something that I really need, I could use the liquidity. So I finally let go of like one of my like ultimate Azrael grails, which I just knew he would have always loved it more than I would, because it had the question in it. And I never really connected the question. I just loved that cover, and it was one of my very first and early in the hobby. And so I finally, let it go to him, and I was actually really happy. Like I thought it was going to be like painful. Yeah, it was painful, but I was actually really happy when he showed it to me on his wall. Because I was like, dude, it's not on my wall, but it's on his wall. That's awesome. It belongs in that collection. And so things like that is really beautiful when it comes to collecting and the journey it is, because we're all just stewards. We're here for a very limited amount of time, and so we can't, take it to the grave. So I think it's just part of the process to just collect together. That's what makes this fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Carl, thank you so much for joining us for the inaugural episode of All Access Art. It's been a real pleasure, and I know we're going to have you on again soon.
Tatiana, it was an honor. Thanks for having me, and it's very meaningful, and I look forward to seeing many more of these episodes.
All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to have Tina and Jason Rak with us today. Some of my longtime illustrator collector buddies. So thank you so much for joining us for our inaugural episode for the show.
Great.
So why don't we just jump in, and why don't you two tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your collecting journey, and then one thing that's a little bit different from other discussions is you two are a collecting couple. It's not the one collector and the other one puts up with it. You're a collecting couple. So tell us a little bit about how that works for the two of you.
Well, basically, my collecting probably started close to 40 years ago. Just was into comic books and, the artists related to that. And then from there, I've always had an interest in art. I was an art student. And it's kind of grown from there. Obviously, falling in love with Magic the Gathering and being in college and an art student really expanded that and got me into other formats along with, Dungeons and Dragons, reading fantasy novels and whatnot. And that's kind of where we met, was in college. And I think Tina's collecting started late high school, early in college, and started with comics as well. So
Yeah, I started with comic art first. I was working at a comic book store, so it kind of fell in line with that. And then we went together on the Wizards did a caravan in 1995.
Yeah.
95, where they got a group of artists together, usually 4 or 5.
it was supposed to be 4 and ended up being 3.
But they would hit different LGSs. They started up in the Portland area, and they were going down the West Coast. So we flew out to meet. The one we happened to be in was at Beaverton.
Yeah, Beaverton, Oregon, outside of Portland. And we were going to see, basically it was supposed to be Richard Kane Ferguson, Quentin Hoover, Liz Danforth, and Harold McNeil. Richard did not make the trip, so we ended up getting to meet Liz, Quentin, and Harold. Spent the entire day at the game store. And,
Pretty much.
It was pretty fantastic. Obviously, we were going out there. I, as a huge fan of Quentin, and that was the only stop he was going to be at. So to go out there to meet him was, obviously a dream come true for me. But I got really to know him better as a person, and from then on we were kind of friends. And same with Liz. Before there was email, there were letter writing and
Snail mail.
whatnot. But and it just kind of, for the both of us, it kind of grew from there.
Yeah.
So for the uninitiated, Wizards is Wizards of the Coast. They are the publisher for Magic the Gathering, and an LGS is like your local game store.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I just figure there's gonna be at least a couple people who go, "What?
Yeah.
They're Wizards?"
I don't understand. Yeah. So, but I think that's really where we started collecting together. Decisions that we made on that trip were together decisions.
Yeah.
So you figure we've been making together decisions like that about art since 95. That's a long time. But they had to be, like, we have some rules for collecting as a couple. One of them is if it's a larger purchase, meaning usually more than like, what would you say, $2,000 or $3,000?
I would say 3,000 is a good threshold. That
we both have to agree on a piece.
Yeah.
If it's below that, it depends. Sometimes we're really like, if we're at an art show or Gen Con, a convention, and we've gotten kind of separated, which doesn't happen as much these days as it used to. We might have the other person come back around the booth, so we can.
I've witnessed that in person.
Yes. And get each other's opinions on if we both like that piece, or maybe there's a different piece that catches his eye that didn't catch mine, or something like that. But most of the time, we agree on things.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting is when we do go to an art show, we usually, on larger pieces, like at IX last year, for an example, which is a Luxicon in Pennsylvania, we actually made a short list of larger pieces that we were interested in as the show went on. And then by Saturday, we were like, okay, which one of these is going to be the one we're taking home? Sometimes others make that choice for us because it gets sold before we get back to it, or we just decide, okay, well, you almost have to start to compare. Okay, which one do we want to take home? We can't do both. Do we like this one better and why and whatnot? And we just kind of whittle it down from there.
Yeah.
So, today's topic is things that you wish you had known previously as a collector. As a couple collecting, it sounds like you've pretty much had a good system from the beginning. Do you feel that's pretty much been the case?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there are some times where we will definitely it'll be a smaller pieces where I'm like, oh, I'm buying this whether you like it or not, and she's done the same. But again, the cooperation really comes in more in the larger pieces.
And I think it's good. When we do go to like shows now that we're more advanced or experienced in our collecting, there are certain things that we try to look for, like usually at a lexicon, sometimes Gen Con, depends on who gets juried into which shows. We try to pick something up from somebody new each time. So that doesn't mean we don't buy from like the artists we usually really love, but we're trying to expand our collection for one, but also expand what we like,
So you like to have a variety of different artists and not just buying.
Yeah, like we don't have just Magic the Gathering art anymore. We don't have just D&D art anymore. We don't have just comic book stuff anymore. We have a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah, and we're not dead set on, a number of set artists either. Obviously, there are a lot of artists we like and we have multiple pieces by them. But like Tina was saying, usually we will go and find a new artist, at least to us, that we would like to take a piece home with us and, grow the collection that way. And each of those artists can have different styles, different, genres.
Than what we have currently in our collection. So an example of that would be probably the first piece we got from Eric Belhagen.
Oh, he's fantastic.
And
I love
his
his stuff.
Right? He is. He's just amazing. But, most of his stuff is palette knife, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't have really any palette knife stuff before.
Right.
So that was, one that kind of drew us to him because, oh my gosh, that's completely different than what we have in our collection. Mm-hmm. But we both liked it, So we ended up getting that first Spectrum. We got one piece from him. And then we were eyeing another one.
Actually, that would have been the second Spectrum.
Well, the first one that we saw him at.
Right.
And we picked up a Magic the Gathering piece from him, the Fire Cat.
Yep.
And then we kept our eye open or on another much larger piece.
Yeah.
We ended up getting it 2 years later?
Oh, more than that.
2 or 3.
3 or 4.
Anyway, but it was a larger piece, so we both had to agree on it. And it was then just about finding the right time to make the buy happen based on budgetary constraints. Right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So, and that was the piece that ended up going to the Norman Rockwell on their Enchanted exhibit. So turned out to be a good purchase, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's great that you two have a system that allows for you each to still buy the things that you want to buy, right? So if you find a cute piece that you like, it's a couple $100. I know for any of you who have ever been to a LuxCon, there's the showcase on Saturday and Sunday night. And I love watching Tina and Jason pop in and pop out. And, we just run, by each other a few times a night. And it's like, that's the time where you usually have the most access to some of the smaller pieces. And
yes.
So there's a lot of, this one's Jason's, this one's Tina's. And, but that you're, as a couple, really responsible with, these larger purchases. These are things that we need to agree on. Just like any other larger financial purchase as a couple, right?
Yeah. If you're buying a house, I mean,
Definitely.
or you're, a car or anything like that, you just have to, I think it's important that you agree. So, yeah. Then the only thing we don't always agree on is where it goes in the house.
Yeah.
Sometimes that gets a lot of discussion, but that's okay.
Play a lot of Tetris.
Yeah. I don't like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Every year that passes, there's less and less space, and you have to get creative. And
Yeah. But I don't think we get any like knockdown, drag out fights about it or anything, but it is just like, oh, I don't think I like that one up there as much as I, let's try something else.
So they just find different homes and new walls.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you can always move things too, right? You put it up, you don't want it there, you can always put it somewhere else. So since you two have been collecting for a while, if you could go back in time and talk to your 1995 selves, other than the hey, buy that right there,
Right.
are there things that now as a collector that you wish you had known then?
That can probably be answered twofold. One related to the artists. They're humans just like us. Yeah, we're fans, but knowing now what we know versus then, just getting to know them is amazing. And honestly, afterwards, once you do, sometimes it isn't about the art anymore. It's more about making friendships. And some of those artists are now friends and family to us. I mean, yeah, we have lots of their art on our walls, but every time we see them, we get together, we'll go out to lunch or dinner, have a drink. And it's more like visiting family you haven't seen in, 6 months or a year. And sometimes it's a yearly thing, sometimes it's every 2 years.
But I think, that is very, treat them like people. They usually respond better to that. And don't be afraid to ask a question, either about a certain piece or their style. Or I know one time, I think I was walking around Gen Con with, was it Jeff Miracola or Chris Seaman? Maybe it was even Ralph. And I'm like, we had just bought a piece and it was a very large piece. And I'm like, man, I don't know. How do I take care of this piece? Because it was an oil, right? And it was like one of our first oils. So I'm like, okay, what do you guys, I just spent this amount of money on it. I don't want to screw it up. And, they were very good at just like a dry brush, or a Swiffer or whatever. Don't put any solutions on it. Just, but they were very good about sharing that information or that knowledge. And I think they respond better when you ask them questions like that, or you ask them about their technique, because it's something that they love to talk about, So I think it's that. I think it's important to do your research. We didn't always do all the research we probably should have earlier. We do now. And this is something that doesn't really apply to us, but I've had some other newish collectors ask me about like pricing, well, what do you think is a good price to pay for this? Or what do you think is how high, if it's going to auction, should I go or whatever? And it's like, one, do your research again, but two, I'm like, well, what's your long-term goals? Understanding what your long-term goals are as a collector, I think is very important. If your long-term goal is to just have some beautiful art that you can put up on the wall, then you got to decide what your price point is for that, right? If it's, I'm going to buy this piece because I think it's nice, it's inexpensive, considering the rest of the market, and maybe I can trade it down the road later. You have to understand what your goal is for that. and I'm sure some of the other collectors you've talked to, Tatiana, or will be talking to throughout this series, are probably more traders or, we call them flippers sometimes. But you might have to explain that to people. But for us, it's we want beautiful stuff on our walls. That's our thing.
Yeah, and I would say, as far as my second answer to that would be, as far as framing goes, obviously understand what you've purchased, what media it is, and how best to protect it, treat it. But as far as framing goes, whether it's mats, frames, don't be afraid to make choices, and then down the road, revisit it and go reframe it. There are multiple pieces that we have that we probably framed at least 2 times now. Others we'd gone in, some just not feeling right about how this is turning out, so we just set it aside. And one of those pieces is that Liz piece that Tina sent you a photo of. It took us like 5 or 6 times before we could actually agree and like how it was going to turn out. So
Yeah, usually when I go to the framer, I take like 5 pieces with me and work on stuff, and we'll have a whole show on framing. You have to finding a good framer is like finding a good hairdresser or a good doctor. I mean, it's all about fit. But I had this framer that I loved when I was in Colorado, and I'd bring like 5 pieces, and some pieces I'd find the right frame combination in 30 seconds. And then there was that one piece where 45 minutes later, I'm still not happy. And it's okay to say, I'm going to choose not to frame this one right now. I'm going to take it back home. That's why I would always bring multiple pieces with me. So if there was one I couldn't quite work out, I could walk away from it.
Right.
Yeah, we do the same. So.
Right. And one of the other things I think, and maybe it's just because we've been collecting for so long that I now recognize the importance of it, and I didn't then, was keeping track of where you got your piece from, how much you paid for it, when did you purchase it. Because if at any point in time you do think you're going to want to move on from that piece, you have to be able to provide that documentation, right, to the next owner. So that is something we did not necessarily do real well in the beginning.
Most of us didn't.
Yeah.
That's why we're having this show, so that when people come home with that first piece of art and they watch this show, they go, oh, I better write that down while it's still fresh in my mind.
Right. And I think that that's important too, is just, and maybe it wasn't as important when we started. I don't know. We also started with a lot of just prints, though.
Prints, sketches,
things we could afford while we were in college, you know.
Oh, yeah. Very normal progression. Same here. Right. Absolutely.
And I do think it's okay to just kind of dip your feet in that way, too. Right.
Absolutely.
Just see if it's even for you, or how important is it for you to have an original on the wall versus a print.
And I love that you brought up what are your goals as a collector? What's important to you? What is it that you want to see on the wall? Do you want to see original Magic the Gathering art? Do you just want nice fantasy art?
Yeah.
What's your budget and how to make those things work, right?
Right.
So that we're less likely to get caught up in the moment. Not that we don't still get caught up in the moment, but it helps a little bit, right?
Yeah. But it's if you do all the rest of those things, the majority of the time, getting caught up in the moment is usually, oh, okay. I didn't totally blow everything. And that's good. I think that's a good way to look at things.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories of times, looking back on that you really wish you had known, and, pricing and that stuff aside, right? Obviously that's a little bit different, but other than that, like things that you wish you had known at the time, later on you go, man, I wish I'd known this and I didn't. And so it caused me a little bit of a problem, or things maybe went a different way than I had hoped they would.
You got any of those?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything that was like a
there are definitely pieces we're sorry we missed out on.
Oh, definitely. But as far as, how we handled something or how something was framed or anything, I mean, we've never had any like horror stories or anything like that.
We did, I think for us, one of the largest problems that we have, and I don't think it's as big of an issue or a deal in the comic book world necessarily, is doing commissions. We were always very hesitant to approach an artist about doing a commissioned painting. If you're walking up to them at a show and you're asking them to do a sketch in your sketchbook or on the back of an artist proof, a magic card or whatever, I think it's a little bit different. But we were then on the hook, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot more of us than saying, oh, I just didn't like how they art directed that piece or whatever. Because we were the art directors, right? That was going to be on us. So I do think we were probably more hesitant to do that.
So kind of that, like the at-home, larger types of commissions.
And as far as the first couple of times that we have done that, we chose an artist that we both liked. We both liked his work. The first piece that that artist did for us was our 10th anniversary wedding piece that we purchased together for both of us. I did more of the art directing, I think, in that one than Tina did. There were certain things I definitely wanted in it and wanted it based on and whatnot. And the finished product came out great.
And then the other time we did it, it was this
the piece behind us.
Huge piece behind us. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip for people to know. I think just because if you go up to an artist table and they don't have a sign for the thing it is that you're interested in getting from them, it's okay to ask. And that harkens right back to the beginning of the conversation, which is they are people too.
Yeah.
There are artists who don't take at-home commissions, whether they don't have the time, which is the usual answer, or maybe they just don't do that. But by and large, most artists will take them. They don't make a sign for it at their table because that's not what most collectors are there for.
Correct.
But it's always okay to ask for, like an off-menu thing. And it's going to be done at home anyway. So maybe you just trade information, and then after the show, you have a conversation about it and, see what it is that you're looking for. And you can start talking price points and options and all of that. And it never hurts to start having that conversation. If you have the conversation and then it turns out it won't be a good fit on either side, it's fine.
Yeah, it is fine. And I think the other thing is you just have to be patient and understand if they're doing a take-home commission, they have to fit it in with their day job, right? So, and you might be on a list. You might be the fifth person down on the list, and just don't try to be in such a hurry.
Especially with paintings, right? That all just takes longer. Yep,
with paintings it takes longer, and but if it's just a sketch, usually that's not too bad on timing wise. But the paintings can be.
And the other thing that's interesting about that is you may or may not want to do a commission, but the other thing that you can do is talk to the artist, because not all of them only do certain genres. I mean, when we reconnected with Mark Poole years back at the First Spectrum, he was getting back into his art, doing things, landscapes and stuff for his own portfolio. And it was a side of Mark we had never seen. And to see where he is at as an artist now, to look back on those early pieces from then, after he was, basically almost out of magic for a while, just getting his own personal portfolio up and running again to start doing art again. Those are the kind of things that I think add to like our collections. We have a lot of
Personal pieces.
Yeah, personal pieces from those artists, even though they've worked on all these games and everything that everybody, that's what most people want is, when people ask us about that, we're like, yeah, we have, basically alternate pieces from those artists. And they're like, you do? Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't think that that's even a thing that they do or that it's available.
Just because somebody's known for something doesn't mean that that's all they do or that it's all they want to do.
Right. An example of that is like, I think almost every single person who plays Magic the Gathering these days probably knows Ryan Pancoast and his, Planeswalkers or the funny poses that he does when his pieces go up for auction. But when I first started paying attention to him, he had just done a Kickstarted book, no words in the book. It's called a Frontier Fantasy, no words at all.
His Western stuff's great, yeah.
Just Western. It was Western fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
but no words, and it told a great story. It was like a little kid's book, right? I think he probably did it for his kid. I think he said in the beginning.
And again, it was only pen and ink, so it was basically black and white. It wasn't even color,
But it's some of the. I think that stuff is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And to be able to see, we love Ryan for his painted pieces that he does for Magic, but he does some killer ink work too, and he loves doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just important to. And even for the artists that you might not like some of their painted stuff, but you might go, oh, they have really good line work, really good pen and ink and whatever. That's okay too. If you like them and want to support them that way. Buy that stuff. Don't buy the paints. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you're essentially one of the tips in the last two things combined that we've talked about is to think outside the box, whether that's commissioning something or buying something that's already made. It's okay to get something that's not the thing that is going to get the most comments when you share online or the thing that everyone's going to look at and recognize. I love getting commissions from artists I know and saying, I want to be open to what they want to draw, but let's talk about what kind of things they like and what I like. And, we find there's always common ground. And the number of anime related commissions I've gotten, you can't see it very well, but over on the wall behind me is a commission from Alex Conat, who's one of the artists that I rep. And it was kind of one of those, do whatever you want. Here are some of the things I like. We'll figure out how much it's going to cost when you're done. And I just got this gorgeous Princess Mononoke anime piece, and I love sharing things like that because then other collectors can go, wow, yeah, it's okay if I don't ask for the characters he's known for, or I don't have to ask for a superhero character.
Right. You can, and they're usually pretty honest with you and they'll be like, oh, no, I don't think I could do that one justice. And then you just keep talking until you find something else.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, especially when you, again, going back to the beginning, you're treating them like a person.
Yeah.
And not a product. And they feel comfortable saying no to something because they know it's just part of the conversation. You're not going to now just turn around and walk away because they don't want to draw some very specific thing that they don't feel that they're going to put out a product that they're going to be proud of.
Right. I think that's true.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely.
What else? I think that's one of the what was the main question again? I lost where we were. Interesting stories. Is that what you were wanting to?
Yeah. Things that have happened that, you wish you had known something else before that. Or just even interesting stories that you can share with other collectors so that it's a good learning experience for them.
So I think it's important for the artist to still, we've talked about treating them like people, right? But you do have to recognize that there is a line that you don't always need to cross, right? Like some of them are still very private people. Some of them are introverts, serious introverts, until they have to go to a con or whatever. And then they've been on for, 8 hours that day. Don't be surprised if you see them in the hotel lobby or at dinner and they're by themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to go up and reintroduce yourself. Sometimes they just need their alone time. But there have been, usually at Gen Con, we try to get a dinner together before the show starts with some of our artist friends. And we usually do, there's a lot of just pickup stuff, just like there is at IX, right? It's like, oh, where are you going to go for lunch? What are you doing for dinner? Oh, you want to tag along with us or whatever? And that will happen organically. I just, you don't need to be impatient about it and wonder if you're ever going to get to that spot. I think it will happen organically.
Yeah.
And the same with talking to other collectors, like we're doing now. Don't always be afraid to, oh, I can't let anybody know what pieces I have, or that kind of.
Mm-hmm. And respecting that is a two-way street. If we've just met and we're new collectors and you're really open and you talk about all the pieces in your collection and I don't want to talk all about mine, that's also okay.
Yeah. And it can change down the road, too. But it is, it's really just being respectful, being courteous, understanding that there is a line that should not be crossed until you get invited over.
Yeah, be personable and be friendly, but don't be pushy.
Yeah.
And everybody loves gifts.
Yeah.
If you've never met Omar before,
Yes.
bring him good whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Scotch. He likes scotch.
Scotch
Yeah.
and bourbon. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I was
cool.
being generic, but
Yeah.
yes. And then for those of us who have known him for a long time, we spend 2 hours every day of IX hanging at the table with him and Sheila, drinking out of one of the cups of Sheila's we just bought at the show.
That's right.
Because she's also an incredible artist.
Oh,
She is. She does amazing work. And I do think that that's one of the things, and maybe it is just because we're a couple, but there are a lot of artists whose spouses are also artists, like Omar and Sheila, Teresa and Scott Fisher, Scott Murphy and Liz Alba, Emily Figgenshoe and Vinod.
Yeah.
Noni and Anthony.
Yeah.
And then even the Miraculous, but
she writes.
she writes.
Yeah.
She's an artist.
It's the classic pairing of Julie and Boris.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So then there's also the Pools, the sculpture Pools, not Mark Poole, who I haven't seen them at IX lately. But
They haven't
used to
come the last couple years, I don't think.
They used to take up almost that whole first section of the floor. So I mean, I just think it's one of those things where some artist couples will share booth space and some will not, and that's okay. But it is sometimes also a little bit of a competition between the two of them. So,
And sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is, and it doesn't mean they're having a fight. It's just how they work their relationship and what works for them, right?
yeah, and sometimes it's just kind of in fun too. Like I know when we were getting some pieces from Liz Alba, she's like, "Okay, my head is Scott now in your collection. My head is Scott."
Yeah. So that's a running joke. Who's got more?
Yeah. So it is.
I tell Elizabeth all the paintings of her on my wall that Scott did count for both of them because
Oh
it's
yeah,
still also her.
yeah. And he's got one or two with the kids in it
Yeah.
too. So
I
yeah,
love that he does that.
yeah,
Artists are all different about that, but I love when I look at paintings and I see faces I know. It makes me smile. We were at OAX this year. Julie Bell brought a few of the magic pieces that she had done for her secret lair. And one of them, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the card right now, but I walked past it and I said, "Hi, Noni."
yeah.
And Julie gets up and she goes, "Don't you just want to tickle her feet?" She was doing this. It was adorable. And that's just one of those, again, organic things that happens over
Yeah.
the years. You get to know people and the relationships they have in their families. And then you start recognizing their faces in the paintings.
Yeah, and it's also good because it helps you see how they, you know, back to Ryan Pancoast, you know, he does the funny poses and, but he uses those as reference pieces. You know, like he'll take pictures of himself or the kids or,
We'll have to pull one of those and put it in this video
yeah.
so people
But
can
those
see
are
what
the
we're
kind of
talking
things
about
that,
because he's hilarious.
I think those are one of the things that, you know, you can, again, once you start to see the people and know the people, then you start to, like you said, you see all the pictures and the, you know, their faces in the pictures and I think that's great.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you for a lot of the a lot of the advice you've given. A lot of this is, you know, when we were, I know that first of all, I want to tell everybody this episode was Tina's idea. Okay. I had talked to some collectors trying to get some show ideas because, you know, obviously I have my own ideas, but this isn't about me. And I loved the show idea. But the thing that I've loved the most is all the things that you've brought up that I never wrote down of ideas off the top of my head that I thought were, oh, these are important things that we're going to talk about. And it's just taken all of these different roads. I think the being a person part, and that's was in my interview with Carl as well, finding your people, building relationships. And that's a really big part about this for a lot of us. You know, he was talking about in school, like the jocks and the nerds and stuff like that. And there is a non-zero number of us in this world who maybe struggled with some of those types of relationships when we were younger, and to be able to build a community with other collectors and with artists is so incredibly meaningful because we are really finding our tribe. That was the word that Carl used, finding your tribe.
Definitely.
And I think that's huge. So I have one last question for you two. And that is, if you're okay sharing with us, what are your 2025 collecting goals?
You want to go first?
Sure. Overall, I'm not sure we have any set goals. Obviously, we're always looking at art, whether or not we make the purchase or not. But we're always, you know, on the lookout for things, especially, you know, stuff that pops up in the MTG art market or Everyday Original or just from the artists themselves through Facebook or posts, whatnot. I mean, we're always open, obviously, to adding stuff to our collection. I wouldn't say, you know, oh, we have to have 5 new pieces this year or anything like that. I think sometimes you can get yourself in trouble that way. I think you need to let life dictate some of that a little bit more, that it isn't always about the art. There's other things in life that are more important. And if it comes down to it, you know, the art has to become secondary or even tertiary, depending on what else you got going on. But, you know, scheduling, going to shows that we get to go to every year, those are the things that we look forward to. And, you know, obviously going to those will probably, in most cases, bring something home. Or if not at one show, we know we're going to the next one. We're going to see that same artist. If they have that piece then, maybe then it'll be time and okay, we can do it. And, or it wasn't meant to be. So
So don't let that cash burn a hole in your pocket. Like just because you have the money to spend doesn't mean you need to spend it there.
Right.
I think we have for the past 2 IXs anyway, tried to find one new to our collection artist, and so we'll grow it that way. I think that's important for us to continue to do. We do try to spread out on mediums.
Yeah.
We just got it's painted on stained glass.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an oil on stained glass. And it's by one of the newer artists that we actually just added to our collection from last year's IX. So
I think I sent you pictures of that one.
I think so.
Okay.
If not, we can get it.
I can get you pictures.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the other thing that kind of ties into that is usually, at least for IX, we kind of give ourselves a budget. And this is what we're going for. This is what we've got to spend. So it's either going to be this, and you obviously got to think about hotel, transit there, your dinners,
food,
and everything else. Okay, what do we got left? Okay, are we going to do one large piece again this year? Or are we going to do what we usually do is
spread it around
as many artists as we can and come home with a lot of smaller stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can also fit more smaller stuff on your walls.
Yes, that is very true. That was something Carl brought up about, when you have the big pieces, it makes it tough. You can only put a couple on a wall and you can't. But if you have small stuff, you can build around the big ones with the small ones.
And
definitely.
It's what we do. But we don't like, and I'm going to go back to magic. We are not collectors of certain characters or character types, right? Like, we don't have just goblins. We don't have just legendary creatures or just merfolk on our wall. We have.
I feel like you're talking about certain people we know, but that's okay.
Maybe.
Those who shall not be named.
That's right. We have a lot of different stuff. Now, I like dogs, along with some other people that we know like dogs. But I don't have to have every single dog. I'm kind of specific on the dogs that I like.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, there are a lot of people anymore who like tree folk, right? I think the Lord of the Rings kind of boosted that back up again with the treants and stuff. But I also have a lot of birds. We have some dragons. We have some people. We have cats.
So you have certain things that you have a tendency to be drawn to, but you don't limit yourself by saying, oh, it's not a dog, I can't get it.
Right. And that is one of the things we're also looking for when we're looking for new things to add to our collection. It's like, kind of been on a dragon kick lately. Maybe we should, look for something else. So for us, our goals are just to add new things.
I love that.
And new people. I mean, that doesn't mean we don't still buy from the people that we love.
Yeah.
But it also means we're not buying just from them.
Well, we got to get you to OAX.
Yeah, it didn't work out this year. I'm hoping next year.
We'll make it happen. We'll talk about it. We will make it happen. I want you two there. It'll be a good, different show for you, and hitting a lot of, we're doing a combination of different things, and so you'll still see a lot of illustrators and comic artists you've met, but we're really mixing it up. Card artists you maybe have never met before, and digging a little bit deeper and looking at things from a slightly different lens. So I think you two will really enjoy it. So we'll get you there.
Yeah, we will. I do think that that's something else, though, that people need to be aware of when they want to start collecting, or even if they just want to go, is look and see what shows are in your area. You don't have to jump on a plane and fly across the country necessarily. There's lots of good regional shows. There's, Gen Con, there's OAX, there's IX, there's all the different PAXs now. Lightbox,
and even in
Gary Con. I'm sure I'm missing like 10 or 20 of them. But
Oh, and there's always new ones all the time. And then there's tiny ones we don't even hear of because it's just local. And there's nothing wrong with going to those too.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I started. Every, third Sunday of, every second month, was a comic book show. And that's some of the early artists that I got introduced to there. I ended up meeting Jim Lee when he was still here before he got big. I mean, he lived here in St. Louis, and I met him at one of those little Sunday afternoon comic shows.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's how I started. I would go to the small one-day shows in Sacramento, SatCon. That was my first show right out of high school. And my very first sketch was Kelly Jones. He just happens to be from Sacramento, and I just, of course, lost my mind because I had absolutely loved his Batman stuff in the 90s. But yeah. So just because it's a small show doesn't mean you can't meet all sorts of artists, right?
Yeah. That's right. So, when I talk about doing your research, that's also part of it, right? See what's available, and you can start small. You don't have to make a big investment, like we were talking about for travel expenses, dinners, that kind of stuff. You can, I'll go over there and maybe I hit McDonald's afterwards or Taco Bell, or it doesn't always have to be high dollar things when you're starting out, and that's okay.
Yeah. Or share a rental house with 4 of your friends, and there's a lot of options. So
yeah.
Well, thank you to both so much for being here. I already have ideas swimming in my head of the next time I'm going to have you on and other things we're going to talk about. But this has been a phenomenal introduction. I think this is just great advice. So thank you so much again, Tina and Jason, for coming on today. I'm excited to have you back for so many other things that we can talk about. Picking your brains. You have tons of experience with collecting and so much knowledge to share. So thanks again for coming on today.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions about today's show, or you have other show ideas, things you'd love us to cover, check out the Google form just below this video. Fill that out, get it sent over, and we'll take a look at what you have. Maybe you'll get a shout out in an upcoming episode, see your questions answered live on air, or have your topic covered in an upcoming episode. Take care.